against the pool wall for maybe a second, two most, before slipping back down and disappearing. Then, like a balloon losing air, the pool deflated. The water drained out through some tears, leaking into the grass. A few of the toys floated to the edge and rolled out onto the ground. Eventually, I got close enough to peek under the pool. Nothing. There were no creatures, no holes, no animal, just soaked grass. hollow feeling that people joke about with finals. Except this wasn't finals fatigue. This was like grief pressing flat into my ribs. I started to get really low. Not the college blues, it was too early for that. Low, but a heavy hopelessness. I told myself I was stressed. Told myself a lot of things. I didn't tell my parents because I didn't want to sound insane or ungrateful. After the scratch night, I started to pray quietly, which is not really my thing. But I kept whispering, please don't let me have to stay here much longer, before falling asleep. I felt ridiculous doing it, but it was the only thing that felt like taking action. That night, I almost felt it, like a physical lightning, or like someone put something warm over me, taking the weight off the end of the bed. I woke up the next morning, and I knew something was going to be different. I didn't tell myself anything official, but I noticed my mood lift a fraction. Within about 24 hours, my housing assignment changed. I don't know if someone called placement, or if it was luck, prayers answered, whatever, but I got an email. You've been assigned, moved to 2B, roommate assigned. The new room was across campus, a new building with people who actually volunteered to be friends, and a room you two liked plants and fun cakes. It honestly felt like heaven after all the fear. I don't want to be dramatic and say that the moment I packed my bags, the place sighed and the devil left, but honestly, that's almost exactly what it felt like. The sulfur smell wasn't in my new place. There was no whispers. Never had another random scratch. My sleep was normal again. That heavy, sour sadness melted like fog. I ran into one of the girls from the temporary dorm months later at a campus event. She asked how I liked my new place. I made some joke and she smiled. I thought about telling her about the scratches and whispers, but I didn't. People have reasons to tell these stories. For attention, they say. For meaning, whatever. I was done getting an air tire though. I'd had enough by that point. Whether it's because I stopped talking about it or because it was attached to that place, I've never experienced anything like it again. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. kid's eyes was a little too knowing. I understand how that sounds, but I literally meet everyone. I just can't explain it except that when he looked at you, it felt exactly like a human stare, like it really saw you. Then there was the weird stuff that would happen when he was around. One Sunday, we had a picnic after church. All the kids played while the parents talked and visited. I was with Mary, Cotton, and 3 other kids. One was a boy our age named Peter who was going vehicle without someone physically moving it. Goosebumps crawled up my arm. My dog stood beside me, ears perked, staring at the pile. I hesitated before picking up the clothes, suddenly uneasy. And then I saw something underneath the pile. Right where it had landed was a small burn mark on carpet, slightly larger than a quarter, darkened and sunken in, like something hot had rested there for quite some time. There was no smell, no smoke, just that perfect scorched imprint. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding. I'd been in this room every day. I would have noticed this mark before. I didn't really know what to do, so I just grabbed his laundry, tossed it in the hamper, and got ready for bed as fast as I could. I tried to sleep, tried to push it out of my mind, but I still think about it all the time, and I still don't have an explanation. I can't help but wonder if a spirit is somehow making its presence known in our apartment. It all started when I suddenly felt a chilling sensation on my lower legs. I was sitting on the couch in the living room, and it was as was fine. He had a few scrapes and bruises. Same with John. Freya immediately came to my side and hugged me. She was crying into my chest and shirt. She had a cast on her left leg and her right arm. First thing out of my mouth was, "Where's Cal?" Declan wouldn't even look at me. John started to cry as Freya knelt beside me and touched my cheek. "There was an accident," she whispered. "Cal, we're not a hero." Declan whispered as I looked at him, and I asked him what the hell he was talking about. He gave me a shocked look like he expected me to remember what happened. Freya asked me what was the last thing I remembered. I told her, leaving the church, people throwing confetti and rice at us, being happy. John just gave a loud sob and said, "He doesn't remember what happened. He doesn't remember the accident, Frey." Declan knelt down beside me and told me everything that happened. There was an accident. Some drunken idiot swerved in front of us in a panic. To prevent an accident, Caleb swerved the car really hard, causing it to roll over, making impact with the car that he was trying to avoid as it hit his side. At the time, I didn't know that Caleb didn't have a seatbelt on, and the memory of him on top of me with the car came back. I started to see some blurry vision, and I realized my husband was gone. He risked his own life because it's just the type of dude my brother was. Declan said. I turned to my best friend and I beg her to tell me that this isn't real. I break down and I start to cry. There's no consoling me. It was hard for me growing up gay, thinking that I would never meet someone, knowing that my family disowned me for the very fact of me wanting to live a true life. And then I met Caleb, this kind, gentle guy who actually seemed to want to spend time with me, to want to get to know me better. And I took all of that love that I had inside of me, and I gave it all to him. And now I was back where I started, alone, broken. The hardest part of all of this was realizing that by the time I woke up, Caleb's funeral had already gone past. I didn't even get to say goodbye. I didn't even get to be there. His parents kept apologizing for having the funeral while I was unconscious. I kept telling them that it was fine, that it was okay. But deep down inside, I was a wreck. I cried almost every night, and to tell you the truth, and then when I stopped crying, to say I loved Caleb is an understatement. Love is too small a word to describe what I felt about him, what I still do. And now, here's the part of the story where shit gets really weird. Over the last 5 years, I've managed to get my PhD and overall try to be happy. I haven't taken my ring off. Every time I try, something always stops me. During the height of the pandemic, that's when shit got really weird. One morning, I decided that I was going for a run. I started to make a protein smoothie for before and after I got back. And while I was using the blender, putting my blueberries and bananas inside, I heard Caleb's voice. It shocked me at first because I wasn't sure if I heard what I had heard. Then when I turned the blender off to listen more carefully, I heard it again. "Babe, have you seen my keys?" I stepped back from the blender and covered my mouth. There were tears burning in my eyes. For context, you should know Caleb was always losing his keys. I wiped my tears away and told myself him off. Boy, was that a huge mistake. After that, things escalated quickly. There were footsteps at night, things going missing and reappearing in the strangest of places. And then there was our wedding photo. It was supposed to be on my nightstand, but every morning when I woke up, it was in the middle of the floor of my living room. The knocking, the voices at night, it all started to ramp up. It's been 5 months of this. Cut to present day, September 2023. I started to get really depressed, and that's when I started to hear Caleb's voice again. It was small things at first. Usually I'd just hear him call me babe or ask me a question. I would ignore him, then I would go into my bathroom and cry for hours. It was not the reprieve from grief that I thought I needed. It was making shit worse. So I called over my sisters, Soraya and Simone, and needless to say, they didn't really believe me. They thought I was grieving, and they weren't wrong, but I had to explain to them that I know what grief is, but that I've heard enough stories from my favorite YouTube channel to know what this is. Soraya laughed and looked at me to say, really, YouTube? Are you really going to base your grief off of a scary YouTube story that you heard? I kicked them out, and I went about my day. I don't speak to my parents, so there was no help that I could get from any outside source. That night, I heard it again. Caleb's voice. This time it was coming from the hallway from the bathroom. The light was turned on, so I couldn't understand just talk. While we were talking and having wine, I thought to myself, Leah is going to have to leave soon, and Freya can only spend so much time with me. I started to get worried. September 14th, 2023. I went back to get a few things today. It did not go well. The minute I stepped into my loft, I heard it. Back so soon. You just can't stay away, can you? I stalked down the hallway into my bathroom and muttered to myself, shouldn't have to stay away. This is my loft. When I started to make my way towards the door, I heard a sob, and then Caleb's voice said, please don't leave again. You know how much I love you. I turned, and you guessed it, I was crying. I know how much he loved me. I cried. And when I get back, I'm going to sage this loft so bad, you won't even be able to breathe in here. At that exact moment, my bathroom door, bedroom door, laundry room door, and guest bedroom door all slammed. The pound consumed, and needless to say, I rushed out of there and back to the hotel. I found Leah and Freya talking to their drinks. Without even saying a word, Leah looked at me. Smith, are you okay? Freya knew something was wrong, so she asked me to talk to her, but I couldn't find the words. Leah looked into my eyes and said, you went back, didn't you? I nodded. She was starting to compile a list of other things that she would need from the store. And that's when she turned to me and said, Smith, I'm starting to think that this isn't a mimic. What you just told me is something much more menacing. I told her I agree, that I definitely knew it wasn't my husband. I started to cry again, and I haven't stopped since. You should consider my story if you ever have a problem with a mimic. Never piss it off. Never try to challenge it. It's 12:55 a.m. and I'm writing this in my hotel room. Freya opted to stay with me, so I'm writing this while staring at her sleeping snoring form in my spare bed. I couldn't be more grateful. I'll keep you all posted with any updates, and I'll definitely be posting what happens after the cleansing. Thanks for listening. Thanks for everyone in the community for all your support. I grew up on the edge of a dying town in Iowa. Our house backed up to endless cornfields that changed hands every few years. Sometimes they were planted, sometimes left dry and brittle for seasons at a time. Either way, they were always a little creepy. This happened when I was about 13. It was the 4th of July, and my cousins were in town from Des Moines. The adults were drinking on the porch, and we were left to entertain ourselves. Someone came up with the brilliant idea to sneak into the cornfield behind our house, light up a few fireworks. Nothing crazy, just bottle rockets and sparklers that we grabbed from a cardboard stand off the highway. It was a clear night, humid and hot, with the stillness that makes every little sound seem louder than it should be. We lit a couple of the rockets and watched them arc through the air over the rows of corn. The sparks crackled, faded, and we were left in the dark again. I was about to light off another when my cousin Jeremy grabbed my arm. Did you see that? He whispered. I hadn't, but the other two nodded. At first I thought they were just messing with me, but then I saw it too. Lights, small, faint, between rows of corn, like flickering lanterns, moving slowly, not swaying like flashlights would, hovering job every Wednesday. A two-way radio, a cot, a weather log, nothing else. At the time, that felt like exactly what I